Hi and welcome to another Music Theory for Beginners episode. In this episode we're going to focus on the note staff and talk about clefs, and namely the two most important clefs, the treble clef and the bass clef. Okay, so first out let's talk about the note staff. On a modern note sheet the staff comprises of 5 lines with 4 spaces, and any line or white space on the staff represents a white key on your keyboard. Next up we have the clefs, and we add different kinds of clefs to the note staff to get a reference point of where we have the different note pitches. First let's talk about the treble clef. The treble clef is also called the G clef, and that's because it begins or circles around the note G on the keyboard. And the G on the G clef is this second line from below. And if we quickly jump over to an empty note sheet, we can actually paint this G clef to learn how to paint this if you ever want to do note sheets by hand. So we begin on this second line from below, and we make this ornament, and we go up like this and go down and up again and make this little turn and go down and make this little hook at the bottom. And there we have a quick and dirty G clef. And it's the G above middle C on the piano. Okay, so let's take a look at the notations here on the G clef note sheet. So first we know that we have the G where we start the G clef, so to speak, on this second line from below. So there we have the G, and that's the G above middle C on your piano. So here we have a middle C, and this is the G above. So to find the other notes, we can just begin at the bottom here, and this is going to be your middle C on the piano. And then you have the D, then the E, then the F, then the G, and the A, and the B, and the C. And then of course we can continue from that top C and continue upwards. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And this will be 2 octaves above our middle C. Okay, so as a beginner it might be a little bit hard to pinpoint the locations on the note sheet for the different note values. But there's actually a little bit of a trick here on the G clef, and that's to remember the word face. Because if we look at the in-between notes, between the lines, we have an F, we have an A, we have a C, and we have the E. Face. The treble clef is often used for instruments like violin, trumpets, clarinets, flutes, etc. And it's going to be your right hand when playing piano melodies. Right, so let's continue and look at our second clef, the bass clef. Okay, so below the treble clef we have the bass clef. And you often see these two together when you have note sheets for things like piano. And when you have both the treble clef and the bass clef, and this connecting brace to show that these belongs to the same instrument, the staff will be called a grand staff. So you often see grand staffs for piano pieces. The bass clef, also called the F clef, circles around the second line from above on the staff. And that's where we have the F note. And when we have a grand staff like this for the piano, we often play the left hand for the bass clef, and then the right hand will play the notes that you see in the treble clef. We begin painting the bass clef here on the F note and make a little circle like this, a half circle that goes down like that, and then we make 2 dots, and there we have the bass clef. Yeah, so let's talk about finding the notes here on the F clef, the bass clef. Well, we know that we have the F on this second line from above, but personally I often take the reference from the C instead, and the C on the F clef is this note. And if we look at the piano, we have the middle C on this note, which is C3 in Logic Pro. But I think on a grand piano, 88 key grand piano, I think that the middle C would be a C4. But here in Logic Pro, the middle C is a C3. And then one octave below, where we have the bass clef, we're gonna have that C2. And then we have the D, E, F, G, A, B, and then the middle C again, which is the C up here on the G clef. And the same goes for going downwards from the C here. We go to the B, A, G, F, E, D, C, etc. downwards. And of course, like we did with the G clef, where we have a phrase to remember the note values, we can also have a little phrase here for the F clef, and that is good boys do fine always. So we have the G, good, B, boys, the D, do, the F, fine, and then we have the A, always. Good boys do fine always. Remember that. The bass clef is obviously going to be used for bass instruments like contrabass, cello, contrabassoon, bassoons, timpani, and trombones and tubas and other like bass instruments. Okay, so that's basically how you read the staff or the grand staff. I always recommend musicians to learn a certain amount of music theory because it really helps with composition and your musicianship. And that's why I made the music theory for beginners course. And you can join today by clicking the link in the description and go to edu.morningdewmedia.com. Thanks for joining today. My name is Matthias. See you in the next one. Bye!